Sirens cut through the heavy, humid air of a sweltering midsummer night, marking the abrupt end of a career, though not the one the officers believed they were ending. Two arrogant patrolmen thought they were simply locking away another faceless statistic when they forced a black man into handcuffs on the shoulder of a deserted highway. They stripped him of his dignity, ridiculed his silence, and threw him into a concrete cell. They had no idea they had just kidnapped a federal agent. Within hours, their badges, their freedom, and the lives they had known would vanish completely. Route 114 was a lonely ribbon of cracked asphalt slicing through the dense, pine-choked county line of Cresthaven. In the deepest hours of the night, the road felt like a void swallowed by the oppressive heat. The only light came from the sharp halogen beams of a dark gray Dodge Charger cutting through the thick air. Behind the wheel sat Darius Cole, broad-shouldered and running on pure exhaustion. He had spent the previous days surviving on lukewarm black coffee and the relentless adrenaline of surveying a high-level logistics hub for a transnational syndicate. Darius was a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, assigned to the Regional Organized Crime Task Force. He was off duty now, at least in theory, wearing a faded charcoal hoodie and worn denim jeans. His badge and credentials rested safely inside a tactical duffel bag in the trunk, alongside his bureau-issued Glock 19. All he wanted was a hot shower and his own bed. He kept the cruise control locked firmly at a steady, lawful speed. A seasoned veteran of the Bureau, Darius knew better than to give local law enforcement any excuse, especially in a place like Cresthaven. The town's police department carried a notorious reputation among federal agencies. It was a predominantly white, affluent suburb where the force often behaved less like public servants and more like an occupying militia. To the officers of Cresthaven, a black man driving an unmarked, late-model muscle car through their town in the dead of night was not a citizen to be protected. He was a target to be claimed. Darius saw the headlights in his rearview mirror long before the flashers appeared. A cruiser had been sitting dark on the shoulder behind a billboard, completely blacked out. The moment the Charger passed, the cruiser roared to life, closing the distance in seconds. Darius checked his speedometer. Perfect. His lane position was flawless. Then the highway erupted in a violent strobe of red and blue light. He exhaled slowly, a deep, weary breath that carried the weight of countless identical, draining encounters. He did not panic. His heart rate never spiked. Training took over with quiet precision. He signaled, decelerated smoothly, and guided the Charger onto the wide gravel shoulder. He shifted into park, killed the engine, and silenced the radio. He rolled down every window to show the interior was clear, then switched on the dome light. Finally, he placed both hands firmly at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, making himself entirely visible and entirely non-threatening. In the side mirror, he watched the driver's door of the cruiser swing open. Officer Trent Harlan stepped out. A longtime veteran of the Cresthaven PD, Harlan carried a personnel file thick with use-of-force complaints that had somehow never led to real consequences. He moved with a swaggering, aggressive gait, one hand resting casually on the butt of his sidearm. Trailing behind him was Officer Brody Quinn, a relatively new recruit whose stiff posture and darting eyes betrayed his nerves. Quinn was the classic follower, eager to earn the approval of a toxic senior officer like Harlan. Harlan approached the driver's window and stopped just behind the B-pillar, forcing Darius to twist awkwardly over his left shoulder to meet his eyes. "Do you know why I pulled you over, boy?" Harlan's voice was a harsh, raspy bark, thick with manufactured authority meant to intimidate. Darius registered the calculated insult instantly. Boy! It was a deliberate test of his control. His face remained a careful mask of polite neutrality. "No, officer, I don't." "You were swerving back there," Harlan lied without hesitation, shining a high-lumen tactical flashlight straight into Darius's eyes. The blinding light was designed to disorient. "Crossed the double yellow line twice. You've been drinking tonight?" "I haven't had a drop of alcohol, officer. I'm just heading home from work." Darius's voice stayed calm, steady, perfectly measured. He understood the psychology of a traffic stop better than the man conducting it. "Work?" Harlan scoffed, leaning closer. The sour scent of cheap chewing tobacco clung to his breath. "What kind of work keeps a man out this late in a car like this? Whose vehicle is this?" "It's a fleet vehicle assigned to me by my employer." The statement was completely true, only the identity of that employer remained unspoken. In that split second, Darius made a deliberate tactical choice. He would not identify himself as a federal agent, reaching for credentials in the trunk or announcing that he was armed, while a hyper-aggressive and clearly prejudiced officer loomed over him in the dark, was an invitation to a panic shooting. Harlan was already hunting for any reason to escalate. Darius decided to let the stop unfold, let them dig their own graves. A fleet vehicle, right. Let me see your license, registration, and proof of insurance. And make it quick. My civilian driver's license is in my wallet in my back right pocket, Darius said slowly, telegraphing every movement. My registration and insurance are in the glove compartment. Which would you like me to retrieve first, officer? Harlan's jaw tightened. He disliked the vocabulary. He disliked the calm. Officers like him fed on fear. When they didn't receive it, they manufactured it. Don't get smart with me. His hand tightened on the holster. Get the license. Slowly. Darius kept his left hand on the wheel while carefully moving his right hand toward his back pocket. As he shifted, the fabric of his hoodie rode up slightly at the hip. An innocent movement. To Trent Harlan, it was the excuse he had been waiting for since the moment he activated his lights. Keep your hands where I can see them, Harlan suddenly screamed, voice shattering the quiet night. He unclipped his holster. Quinn, watch his hands! Quinn jumped, hand flying to his own weapon, flashlight trained through the passenger window. I got him, Trent. My hands are visible, officer, Darius said, freezing in place, right hand still gripping the edge of his wallet. I am complying with your orders. Shut your mouth, Harlan roared. He yanked the driver's door open with a violent jerk. Step out of the vehicle now! Do it now! The trap had sprung. The escalation was entirely artificial, engineered by a man with a badge to justify his own brutality. Darius drew a slow, deep breath. He released the wallet, raised both hands, and stepped carefully into the humid night. The game had changed. As he exited the Charger, the physical difference between the two men became impossible to ignore. Darius stood tall and powerfully built, the product of years of federal defensive tactics training. Harlan was shorter, thicker around the middle, fueled by energy drinks and a deep-seated need to dominate. The realization of Darius's size did not make Harlan back down. It only made him more vicious. Fear and ego collided into a dangerous mixture of aggression. Turn around! Face the car! Harlan barked, stepping back slightly, hand hovering over his unholstered weapon. Darius complied without a word. He turned smoothly, placed his hands flat against the still warm roof of the Charger, and spread his feet into a stable, non-combative stance. In his mind, the federal agent was no longer simply enduring a traffic stop. He was gathering evidence. Every illegal command, every unjustified physical contact was another brick in the federal indictment he was already building. Harlan stepped in close and slammed his forearm into the center of Darius's back, pinning him painfully against the vehicle. It was completely unnecessary. Spread your legs wider. He kicked the inside of Darius's left ankle with a heavy boot, forcing his stance wider with deliberate force. Darius bit the inside of his cheek to keep from making a sound. He remained silent. Quinn, get over here and cover me while I search him. The younger officer hurried around the car, flashlight trembling slightly as it stayed fixed on Darius's back. Trent, you sure about this? He was just reaching for his wallet. Shut up, Brody. He made a furtive movement. I saw what I saw. Harlan growled as he patted Darius down with rough, aggressive hands. He dug into the pockets, pulled out the leather wallet, and tossed it onto the roof. He found a cell phone, keys, and nothing else. No weapons, no contraband. You've got a lot of nerve driving through my town at this hour, Harlan sneered close to Darius's ear. You think you belong here? I am a citizen traveling on a public roadway, Darius answered, voice flat and emotionless. You're a suspect, Harlan countered. He grabbed Darius's left wrist and twisted it behind his back with enough force to strain the joint, then unclipped his handcuffs. You're under arrest. For what charge, officer? Darius asked calmly as the cold steel bit into his wrist. Resisting arrest, failure to obey a lawful order, and erratic driving, Harlan rattled off, inventing the charges on the spot. He wrenched Darius's right arm back to meet the left and ratcheted the second cuff down tight, intentionally neglecting to double lock them. With every small movement, the serrated metal would tighten further, cutting off circulation. "You are securing those cuffs too tightly. It is cutting off the blood flow to my hands," Darius stated clearly for the record, knowing the dashcam microphone would capture every word. "Stop resisting and it won't hurt," Harlan mocked, shoving him roughly toward the rear of the cruiser. Quinn opened the back door as Harlan pushed Darius down onto the hard plastic seat of the cage. For a brief moment their eyes met. In the rookie's face, Darius saw a flicker of doubt. Quinn knew this was a bad arrest. He knew they had no probable cause. But the blue wall of silence, reinforced by Harlan's overbearing presence, kept him quiet. The door slammed shut, sealing Darius into the stifling heat of the back seat. Through the plexiglass divider, Darius watched Harlan return to the Charger and tear through the interior. Papers, logs, and registration spilled out. Finding nothing of interest, Harlan tried the trunk, but it remained locked. He returned to the cruiser, opened the rear door, and glared at Darius. "Pop the trunk." "I do not consent to a search of this vehicle," Darius said clearly. "You do not have a warrant, and you do not have probable cause." "I have probable cause," Harlan lied with a vicious grin. "I smell marijuana emanating from the vehicle. That gives me the right to search every inch of it. Now pop the trunk before I call a tow truck and have it impounded." Darius knew that the moment Harlan opened that trunk and saw the tactical bag, the body armor, and the federal credentials, the situation would spiral into something far more dangerous. A panicked, corrupt officer with a gun in the middle of nowhere was the most unpredictable threat imaginable. It was safer to let them take him to the station. "I do not consent," he repeated steadily. "Fine, we'll impound it." Quinn radioed for a wrecker. Harlan slammed the door, climbed behind the wheel, and pulled back onto the highway with a screech of tires. In the back seat, Darius sat in absolute silence. The cuffs were agonizingly tight. His hands were already going numb. He stared at the back of Harlan's head, studying the man who believed he had just asserted dominance over someone he viewed as beneath him. Darius closed his eyes, ignored the pain, and began mentally drafting the incident report. He memorized the badge numbers. He noted every detail. They were taking him to the Crest Haven precinct, exactly where he wanted to be. Once inside a monitored government building, the physical danger would drop significantly. And once he made his phone call, the full weight of the United States federal government would descend on Crest Haven like a storm. The Crest Haven Police Precinct was a grim concrete building that smelled permanently of ammonia, stale coffee, and quiet despair. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with a sickly yellow flicker as Harlan and Quinn hauled Darius through the heavy metal rear doors into the booking area. Desk Sergeant Ellis Crow sat behind an elevated bulletproof partition, a veteran counting down the days to retirement. He barely looked up from his crossword as Harlan shoved Darius forward against the counter. "What do we got, Trent?" "Traffic stop turned hostile," Harlan declared, chest puffed out. "Subject was driving erratically, refused lawful orders, resisted arrest when I attempted to secure him, refused to consent to a vehicle search after I established probable cause via the odor of narcotics." Crow sighed and pulled a blank booking sheet toward him. He finally looked at Darius, who stood tall despite the cuffs biting into his wrists. "Name? Darius Cole." He recited an address in a neighboring city, a secure apartment maintained by the Bureau for agents on long-term assignments. "Take his stuff," Crow ordered mechanically. Quinn stepped forward, looking visibly uncomfortable, and removed Darius's sneakers and belt, tossing them into a plastic bin. Harlan threw the seized wallet in after them. "That's all he had on him. Vehicle is being towed. We'll strip it in the morning." "I'll hold him in cell 3. I'll process the paperwork." Crow stamped the sheet. He never asked if Darius was injured. He never checked the tightness of the cuffs that had already left deep red marks in the skin. Harlan led Darius down a short, grim hallway to an 8x8 cage containing only a stainless steel toilet and a concrete bench. He unlocked the cuffs. Blood rushed back into Darius's hands with a burning, agonizing prickle. Darius rubbed his wrist slowly, locking eyes with Harlan through the bars as the heavy door slammed shut with a final metallic clack. "Get comfortable, boy," Harlan sneered, rattling the bars with his nightstick. "You're gonna be here a while. Hope you like the sandwiches." "I am legally entitled to a phone call," Darius said, his voice echoing off the concrete. Harlan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, he knows his rights. Sure thing. There's a payphone on the wall. I'll even turn it on for you. Call your public defender. Maybe they'll care. He walked away with Quinn. Through the slightly open door of the break room, Darius could hear them laughing. Harlan was already bragging, exaggerating the resistance, weaving a story that would justify everything he had done. Darius reached through the bars, lifted the heavy metal receiver, and dialed a secure federal number. 30 miles away, Special Agent in Charge Victor Langley was pulled from deep sleep by the distinctive, aggressive tone reserved strictly for agents in distress. He was fully awake before the third ring. Langley. Victor, it's Darius. The voice on the line was calm, clipped, and strictly professional. Langley sat up instantly. He knew that voice. He knew that tone. Something had gone wrong. Status, Darius. Where are you? I am currently secured in holding cell 3 at the Cresthaven Police Department. I was intercepted on Route 114 by 2 patrolmen. Illegal stop, manufactured probable cause. Physical assault under color of law. False arrest. Langley's blood ran cold, then burned with white-hot fury. He knew Cresthaven's reputation. Are you injured? Negative. Handcuffs were applied punitively, but I am combat effective. Vehicle is being towed to their impound. My credentials, sidearm, and federal property are secured in the trunk. Did you identify yourself? Langley was already moving, pulling on tactical pants. Negative. The officers were highly volatile. Subject Harlan, badge 481. Subject Quinn, badge 5902. Harlan exhibited extreme aggression and clear racial bias. I assessed that producing a firearm or identifying as federal law enforcement in that environment posed an imminent threat to my life. I allowed the arrest to proceed to preserve my safety and gather actionable evidence of civil rights violations. Langley paused for only a fraction of a second, struck by his agent's icy tactical clarity. Darius had not merely survived a rogue stop. He had allowed himself to be taken so he could build an airtight federal case against a corrupt department. Understood. Do not engage further. Do not answer questions. Maintain your cover as a civilian. I am initiating a full mobilization. Copy that, Victor. See you soon. Darius hung up, walked to the concrete bench, sat down, and leaned his head against the cold wall. He closed his eyes. Miles away, Langley was already making calls. The first went to the commander of the regional SWAT element. Spin up the team. Full tactical gear. A federal agent had been taken hostage by local law enforcement under color of law. The second went to the United States Attorney. Wake the duty judge. Federal arrest warrants for 2 Cresthaven officers and a federal seizure warrant for the entire precinct building were required immediately. Back in the station, Harlan poured another cup of coffee in the break room, still riding the high of his supposed victory. I'm telling you, Brody, guys like that think they own the road. You have to put them in their place early, or they walk all over you. Quinn stared at the floor, unsettled. He was so quiet, Trent. Too quiet. Most guys are screaming or begging. He didn't even flinch. It was weird. He's a thug. They all act tough until the cell door closes. He'll break soon enough. Sergeant Crow called from the front desk. Trent, I ran his name through the system. Something's wrong. Harlan walked out, coffee still in hand. What do you mean? Does he have warrants? No, it's not giving me warrants. It's giving me a lock screen. Says file restricted. Clearance level alpha required. I've never seen this before. An icy knot formed in Quinn's stomach. The memory of the black charger, the man's unnatural calm, the perfect posture of someone who had just been thrown into a cage. It all suddenly felt wrong. Trent, what if he's somebody? He's nobody. Harlan snapped, though a thin edge of unease finally cut through his arrogance. Call county. Have them run it manually. The system is probably just glitching. The system was not glitching. The Department of Justice firewall was functioning exactly as designed. As Crow reached for the phone, a low, heavy vibration began to rattle the thin glass of the front windows. It was deeper and more rhythmic than any ordinary vehicle. Quinn turned toward the doors. Do you guys hear that? The sound grew louder, joined by the screech of heavy military-grade tires locking up on asphalt. Then came the lights. Not the familiar red and blue of local patrol cars, but solid, blinding federal red. Through the front windows, the three men watched in frozen horror as three armored matte black Chevy Suburbans swerved into the parking lot, boxing in every police cruiser. Behind them, a massive Lenco Bearcat tactical vehicle rolled to a stop, completely sealing the exit. The storm had not merely arrived, it was already at the door. The heavy glass of the front entrance did not simply open, it was breached. Four operators in olive drab tactical gear and heavy ballistic plate carriers poured into the lobby in a seamless wave of controlled aggression. Weapon-mounted lights cut through the stale air. The silence of the night shattered under the booming commands of the FBI regional SWAT team. FBI, nobody move. Keep your hands where I can see them. Do it now. The point operator, a towering figure with a suppressed rifle tucked tight against his shoulder, swept the barrel across the room. The red laser locked dead center on Trent Harlan's chest. Three more red dots appeared instantly, painting him like a target on a range. Behind the glass, Sergeant Crow froze. The pen slipped from his trembling fingers and clattered onto the counter. Officer Brody Quinn dropped his water bottle. It hit the floor and spilled across his polished boots. His hands shot into the air so fast he nearly injured himself. Harlan's right hand twitched toward the Glock on his hip. "Don't even think about it," the point operator roared, stepping forward until the muzzle was inches from the glass. "Move that hand another inch, and I will drop you right here. Hands up, now." Harlan's bravado shattered. Slowly, agonizingly, he raised his hands. The color drained from his face until he looked sickly pale. Through the shattered doors strode Special Agent in Charge Victor Langley. He wore a sharply tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt without a tie, and a dark overcoat. His FBI badge hung on a heavy silver chain, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. His face was a mask of cold, absolute fury. He did not draw a weapon. He did not need one. Authority radiated from him like heat. He walked straight to the booking counter and stopped in front of the glass where Crow sat paralyzed. "I am Special Agent Langley, United States Department of Justice," he announced in a low, dangerous growl that commanded total silence. "This building is now under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation pursuant to a federal seizure warrant signed minutes ago by a United States District Judge. Step away from the desk." Crow swallowed hard. "Sir, what is this about?" "The keys," Langley demanded, ignoring the question. He pointed at the heavy ring of iron keys on the desk. "Give them to me, now." Crow scrambled, grabbed the keys, and shoved them through the transaction slot. Langley snatched them, turned on his heel, and marched down the short hallway toward the holding cells, two SWAT operators tight on his flanks. He stopped in front of cell 3. Darius Cole sat exactly where he had been left, posture still perfect, face an impassive mask. He looked up at his superior. "You're late, Victor." A faint ghost of a smirk touched the corners of his mouth. "Traffic was a nightmare," Langley replied, the tension in his shoulders easing as he confirmed his agent was unharmed. He found the right key, turned the heavy deadbolt, and pulled the iron door open with a grinding screech. Darius stood, rolled his shoulders, and shook out his wrists. Deep, dark red bracelets of bruised tissue circled both forearms where the steel had bitten into flesh. Langley's eyes dropped to the injuries, and the cold fury returned. "Are we good?" he asked quietly. "We're perfect," Darius answered smoothly. "Let's go to work." He walked out of the cell and led the way back to the booking area. When he emerged into the fluorescent light, the entire dynamic of the room shifted with tectonic force. Harlan and Quinn still stood with their hands raised, guarded by heavily armed operators. Harlan's eyes widened in pure disbelief as the man he had mocked, assaulted, and thrown into a cage walked out flanked by an FBI special agent in charge and two SWAT operators. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The calm demeanor, the precise vocabulary, the refusal to break. He had not arrested a thug, he had kidnapped a federal agent. "Oh God," Quinn whispered, voice cracking, knees visibly shaking. "Oh my God, Trent, what did we do?" Darius walked directly up to Harlan and stopped mere inches away. The height difference was glaring now that the element of surprise and the cover of darkness were gone. He looked down at the man, eyes completely devoid of emotion. "You didn't ask for my occupation, Officer Harlan," he said in a low, smooth baritone that filled the dead silent room. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Special Agent Darius Cole, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Organized Crime Task Force, and you have the right to remain silent. The Crest Haven precinct was systematically dismantled in less than half an hour. It was not merely an arrest. It was an occupation. A white FBI evidence response team van arrived on the heels of the SWAT team. Agents in blue windbreakers and latex gloves moved through the building like a precision force, seizing everything of evidentiary value. They disconnected computers, bagged internal surveillance hard drives, and extracted the dashcam hard drive from Harlan's cruiser. Everything was locked down under the federal seizure warrant. The local officers were completely powerless to stop it. Another agent had already retrieved Darius's tactical duffel from the impounded Charger and brought it to him. Right in front of Harlan and Quinn, Darius unzipped the bag. He pulled out his bureau-issued Navy windbreaker with the bold yellow letters FBI across the back and slipped it on. He secured his Glock 19 in a leather paddle holster at his right hip. Finally, he opened his credentials case, revealing the gleaming gold shield and federal identification, and clipped it to his belt. The transformation was absolute. The man they had degraded on the side of Route 114 was gone. In his place stood a fully armed, legally terrifying agent of the United States government. Harlan, watching his entire life disintegrate, tried to claw back some control. Desperation replaced shock. "You can't do this," he shouted, lowering his hand slightly before a SWAT operator aggressively nudged him back into position with the barrel of a rifle. "I am a sworn police officer. I have union representation. I want my lawyer. This is an illegal occupation of a municipal building." Langley, overseeing the extraction of server hard drives, turned slowly. He smiled, a cold, shark-like expression completely devoid of warmth. "You can call your representative from the federal holding facility, but I assure you, he does not have the clearance to stop what is happening here. The Department of Justice does not recognize local union rules when officers engage in this systemic deprivation of civil rights." Darius stepped forward, holding a small black notebook. He opened it and looked directly at Harlan. "Let's review the timeline, Trent." He deliberately dropped the title of officer. "You initiated a traffic stop without probable cause. You claimed I crossed the double yellow line. The dash cam your colleagues just secured will show I maintained perfect lane discipline. That is a violation of the Fourth Amendment." Harlan swallowed. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "You ordered me out of the vehicle and physically assaulted me by slamming me against the car and kicking my ankle. I made no aggressive movements. You then secured handcuffs with punitive tightness, intentionally cutting off circulation, and ignored my complaints of pain. That is a violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. It carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison." Quinn let out a quiet, broken whimper. He looked at Darius, tears welling. "Agent Cole, please. I didn't touch you. I just stood there. Trent told me to watch your hands. I didn't do anything." "And that is your crime, Brody," Darius said, turning his cold gaze on the rookie. "You watched a senior officer violate a citizen's constitutional rights, commit assault, and falsify an arrest, and you did nothing to intervene. Under federal law, failure to intervene when another officer is committing a constitutional violation makes you a co-conspirator. You are equally culpable." "I was scared of him," Quinn sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Harlan. "He said he smelled marijuana. He made it up so we could impound your car. I knew it was a lie, but he threatened me if I didn't back his play." "Shut your mouth, Quinn," Harlan screamed, face mottled with fury. "Shut your damn mouth, you coward. Don't say another word to these feds." "He's already said enough," Langley interjected, stepping up beside Darius. "Agent Cole, are these the two men who assaulted and falsely imprisoned you tonight?" "Yes, sir." "Take their badges, disarm them, cuff them." Langley looked at Darius. "And Agent Cole, make sure they're tight." The operators moved in. Harlan and Quinn were spun around. Their duty belts, heavy with weapons and equipment, were stripped away and dropped to the floor. The silver Crest Haven badges were unpinned from their chests and tossed onto the desk like discarded trash. Then the steel handcuffs came out. An operator wrenched Harlan's arms behind his back and locked the heavy cuffs down hard. Darius watched without expression. There was no joy, no vindictive pleasure, only the cold, hard satisfaction hidden of a predator finally closing the trap on long-hunted prey. Process them here, Langley instructed, then put them in the interrogation rooms. We're not waiting. The irony was almost unbearable. Interrogation Room A was a windowless concrete box painted a depressing institutional gray. For years, Trent Harlan had used this very room to break people through intimidation and the threat of violence. Now he sat on the uncomfortable metal chair, hands cuffed to the heavy steel ring on the wall. Stripped of his badge, his gun, his belt, and his authority, the uniform looked like nothing more than a cheap costume. Next door, in Room B, Brody Quinn was hyperventilating. Darius and Langley stood in the narrow observation hallway, watching both men through the two-way mirrors. Standard prisoner's dilemma, Langley said quietly, sipping coffee brought in from the evidence van. The rookie is practically vibrating out of his chair. He's terrified of Harlan, but he's more terrified of federal prison. We break Quinn first. Darius nodded. Get him on the record detailing the fabricated probable cause and the culture of corruption here. Once we have his sworn statement, we drop it on Harlan like an anvil. He won't confess. His ego won't allow it. But we don't need a confession to ruin him. We just need to break his spirit. Your show, Darius. I'm just here to observe. Darius opened the heavy door to Room B. Quinn jumped, the chain of his cuffs rattling loudly. His face was streaked with tears, eyes wide with panic. Darius walked in slowly. He did not slam files on the desk. He did not raise his voice. He simply pulled out the chair across from Quinn, sat down, and folded his hands on the table. He let the silence stretch, allowing the younger man's anxiety to boil over. Agent Cole, sir, you have to believe me, Quinn begged, voice trembling so violently the words barely formed. I didn't want to pull you over. I didn't want to arrest you. It was all Trent. He targets cars like yours. He calls it fishing. If he sees a nice car and a black driver on the highway late at night, he pulls them over. He says they're either drug runners or they have outstanding warrants. It's his thing. Darius activated the digital recorder. State your name for the record. Brody Quinn. Officer Quinn, you are waiving your right to an attorney and speaking to me voluntarily. Yes, absolutely. I want to cooperate. I'll tell you everything. For the next stretch of time, Quinn poured out everything. It was a flood of corruption. He detailed how Harlan routinely falsified reports to justify illegal searches. He explained the radio code words used to signal a profile stop. He confessed that there had been no erratic driving on Route 114 and that the claim of smelling marijuana was a pre-planned script designed to circumvent the Fourth Amendment. He told me if I didn't back him up, he'd make sure I never made it past my probationary period, Quinn cried, burying his face in his cuffed hands. He said the Brotherhood protects its own. I was just trying to keep my job. I swear to God, I was just trying to be a cop. You stopped being a cop the moment you let him put those cuffs on me, Brody, Darius said softly without pity. You became an accomplice to a felony. He stood and left Quinn weeping in the sterile room. In the hallway, he handed the recorder to Langley. Got him. He just handed us the keys to a federal consent decree against this entire department. Excellent work. Now for the main event. Darius took a steadying breath, letting the cold, analytical focus of a federal interrogator settle over him, and pushed open the door to Room A. Harlan looked up, jaw set in a hard, defiant line. He was trying desperately to project strength, but the slight tremor in his leg betrayed him. You're making a huge mistake, Cole, he sneered, attempting to sound dangerous. You think because you've got a shiny gold badge, you can just walk into my town and take over? My union lawyer is going to eat you alive. You provoked me. You acted suspiciously. Any reasonable officer would have done the same thing. Darius did not sit. He walked around the table and stood uncomfortably close, forcing the disgraced officer to look up at him. There will be no union lawyer, Trent. There will be no internal affairs investigation where your friends sweep this under the rug. You are not dealing with the mayor's office or a local grievance board. He pulled a single folded sheet of paper from his jacket and dropped it onto the metal table. That is a sworn signed affidavit from your partner, Brody Quinn. He tapped the paper with one finger. He just spent a long time detailing your entire fishing operation. He confirmed the lack of erratic driving. He confirmed the fabricated marijuana odor. He confirmed that you targeted me based entirely on racial profiling. He traded his testimony for a plea deal. He is going to testify against you in federal court. Harlan's defiant facade cracked. He's a rookie. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You coerced him. He's a lying rat, Harlan screamed, yanking at the steel ring until the chain bit into his wrists. "Cops don't turn on cops." "You're right," Darius said, leaning down until his face was inches from Harlan's. "Cops don't turn on cops. But you're not a cop anymore, Trent. You're a federal inmate." He straightened and adjusted his windbreaker. "We pulled the dash cam audio from your cruiser. I made sure to state clearly and loudly that you were applying the handcuffs punitively and cutting off my circulation. You responded by mocking me and intentionally refusing to check them. That audio, combined with Quinn's testimony, combined with the severe bruising on my wrists, verified by an FBI medic, meets the exact statutory definition of Section 242. Harlan stopped pulling at the chain. He stared at the metal table, breathing shallow and rapid. The full weight of his absolute, inescapable destruction settled over him like a suffocating blanket. He was not facing a suspension or early retirement. He was facing a federal penitentiary, wearing a badge of shame that would make him a target for every inmate inside. "You threw away your career, your pension, and your freedom in the span of a single night," Darius said quietly as he walked toward the door. "And you did it all because you could not stand the sight of a black man driving a nice car in your town." He looked back one last time at the broken man shackled to the wall. "I told you I was just heading home from work, officer. You really should have listened." Dawn broke over Crest Haven, painting the humid sky in streaks of bruised purple and dull orange. The morning light offered no redemption for the town's police department. The perimeter of the brutalist concrete precinct was fully cordoned off by heavy federal barricades. The flashing red lights of the FBI tactical vehicles still cut through the mist, drawing a growing crowd of bewildered locals and aggressive news crews. Word had leaked. A federal raid on a local police station was blood in the water for the regional media. A black Chevy Tahoe skidded to a stop just outside the barricades. Chief Warren Hale of the Crest Haven Police Department stepped out, a political survivor who had spent years ignoring the rot within his ranks as long as the crime statistics looked acceptable on paper. He marched toward the front doors, face a mask of performative outrage, flanked by his public relations officer. "Who is in charge here?" he bellowed, flashing his gold star at a heavily armed SWAT operator guarding the shattered entrance. "I am the chief of police. You are illegally occupying a municipal facility. Step aside." The operator did not flinch. He simply adjusted his grip on the rifle, an immovable wall. From the shadows of the lobby, Special Agent in Charge Victor Langley emerged, holding a thick manila folder, his navy suit still impeccably pressed despite the sleepless night. He walked into the humid morning air and stopped inches from Hale. "Chief Hale, I am SAC Langley, FBI." "Langley, you have lost your mind," Hale hissed, trying to keep his voice down. "You bring a tactical team into my house over a bad traffic stop. We could have handled this internally. Internal Affairs would have given Harlan a few weeks on the desk. You are humiliating this department." Langley's eyes went cold. He opened the folder and shoved a thick stack of federal warrants into Hale's chest. "Your department is not being humiliated, Chief. It is being dismantled. We are not here for a single traffic stop. By the time my evidence response team finishes pulling your servers, the Department of Justice will have enough data to prove a long pattern of systemic racial profiling, falsified evidence, and civil rights abuses. Your house is a federal crime scene. And if I find out you signed off on any of these fabricated arrest reports, you will be wearing matching bracelets with your patrolmen." Hale went pale. The bluster drained from his posture as he looked at the warrants, then at the growing line of news vans extending their antennas into the morning sky. He realized his career was finished. The heavy metal doors of the precinct swung open. The chatter of the press died instantly, replaced by the frantic clicking of camera shutters. Out walked Trent Harlan. The swaggering, arrogant predator who had ruled Route 114 was gone. He had been stripped of his uniform and now wore a disposable white Tyvek jumpsuit. His wrists were secured in heavy federal handcuffs attached to a rigid belly chain. His ankles were bound by iron leg shackles. Every step produced a pathetic metallic clinking. He looked utterly destroyed, eyes fixed on the pavement, desperately trying to hide his face from the flashing cameras. Right behind him came Brody Quinn, similarly shackled, weeping openly as the cameras captured his complete disgrace. They were being perp-walked out the front doors of their own station. And the men leading them down the concrete steps were not their brothers in blue. They were federal agents in windbreakers with bold yellow lettering. Waiting at the bottom of the steps, standing casually beside a recovered, pristine dark gray Dodge Charger, was Darius Cole. He had changed back into his civilian clothes, the faded charcoal hoodie and worn denim jeans. He held a cup of black coffee in his right hand. He did not gloat. He did not shout. He simply watched in profound silence as the machinery of absolute justice ground Trent Harlan into dust. As Harlan shuffled awkwardly toward the waiting federal transport van, he forced himself to look up. His eyes locked with Darius's. For a few seconds, the world around them disappeared. Harlan stared at the black man he had tried to break, the man he had called boy, the man he had thrown into a cage for his own twisted amusement. Darius offered no smile, no sneer of victory. He simply raised his coffee cup a fraction of an inch in a silent, mocking toast. Harlan's chin trembled. A single tear of pure humiliation leaked from his eye before a federal agent firmly pushed his head down and guided him into the suffocating darkness of the transport van. The heavy metal door slammed shut with a sound of finality that echoed across the parking lot. The fallout was catastrophic and swift. In the months that followed, Trent Harlan stood before a federal judge and was sentenced to 8 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary for civil rights violations under color of law. With his law enforcement background, those years would be a waking nightmare of isolation and constant fear. Brody Quinn, having testified against his mentor, received a reduced sentence of 2 years. His life was permanently derailed, branded a felon who could never again carry a badge or a gun. The Crest Haven Police Department did not survive the year. The Department of Justice imposed a massive consent decree that effectively stripped the municipality of its law enforcement autonomy. Chief Warren Hale was forced into an early, disgraced resignation, and a federal monitor was installed to rebuild the department from the ground up. Darius Cole went back to work. Soon after, he was once again behind the wheel of his Dodge Charger, cruising another highway, chasing ghosts in the criminal underworld. The bruised skin on his wrists slowly faded, leaving no permanent scars. But the memory of that sweltering night remained, a chilling reminder of how thin the line is between authority and tyranny, and a powerful testament to the devastating effectiveness of staying calm, playing the long game, and allowing the arrogant to dig their own inescapable graves. Power placed in the wrong hands is a dangerous weapon. Arrogance is a fatal blind spot. What began as a power trip for 2 corrupt officers ended in the total destruction of their careers, their freedom, and their toxic empire, all because they underestimated the quiet man in the dark hoodie. True strength is not found in yelling, bullying, or flashing a badge. It is found in the cold, calculated patience of letting justice do its heavy lifting. If this story of instant accountability and karma delivered with precision resonated with you, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a brilliant plot twist, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible true-life dramas. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you had been in Darius's shoes? Until next time, stay sharp and stay safe.